So congestion charges, ultra low emission zones, everything in between when it comes to trying to reduce traffic, trying to reduce the emissions of a city, a kind of urban area. It's a topic that's constantly being talked about. It's been going on here in the UK in London for over 20 years now, and we're still not really settled on a system that we think works. But on top of that as well, Ed, it's something that has tried to happen in your nation of the USA, but it's not gone to plan so far.
No, and congestion is a really interesting thing because I live here in Boston, and one of the worst traffic areas in the entire country, and it's just become this irritating fact of life. It's you put up with it, and you say, "Well, I want to live in Boston or I want to live in New York City. I'm just going to have to put up with the traffic." So the idea is that congestion pricing can help alleviate this irritating fact of life. And so the idea is let's eliminate the bad economic and environmental consequences that congestion and traffic cause. So for instance, you got a bunch of cars sitting around burning fuel. There's greater chances for accidents, the more cars you have in congested areas, that type of thing. It can cost billions of dollars for a big city like Los Angeles or New York, that type of thing. And of course, there's the pollution that you get and the adverse health effects that come from all that. So it's not just a matter of the number of cars, but also cars just sitting around running and not doing anything. What can you do to eliminate that? And that's where congestion pricing comes in. So it can take a lot of different forms, but fundamentally, it's to reduce the amount of clogging that you have on the roads versus, say, a fuel tax, which would be equal for everyone. So if you're not clogging the roads, we're not going to charge you. But if you are, we're going to figure out a way to have a penalty so that you stop clogging the roads. So this could be things that encourage you to do carpooling, try and keep you out of a city during real busy times. And of course, you would exempt like emergency vehicles or vehicles that have multiple passengers like buses. So that's the idea behind congestion pricing. And it's been done for quite some time in London. They are the pioneers of congestion pricing since 2003, 2004. They've even added on an ultra low emission zone that goes hand in hand with that. It's also been done in Scandinavia, in Stockholm and in other cities. And New York City has also been considering congestion charging with roughly the same price that you charge in London of around about $15 in New York. However, it turns out, as of about just within the last couple of months, a decision has been made to indefinitely postpone it. In part because it's not very popular, and it is an election year in the States, so popularity does work in. But the actual reason given is that it could have negative impacts on the economy while we're still recovering from COVID. So for now, in the U.S., congestion pricing is on hold. But so let's look at London and see how it works there. So in London, there's a standard daily charge of about $18, 15 pounds to enter the city. It was initially over about 20 years ago, it was about 5 pounds. And so you enter the city, you have to pay this fee. However, there are exemptions: emergency vehicles used by the disabled, bicycles, and EVs, although that may be phased out in the future. Taxis also are exempt. Uber are exempt, although they do now have to pay a small additional fee. And if you live in the city, you don't have to. There's a significant discount if you live within the restricted zone. And piled on top of this, like I mentioned, is this ultra low emission zone. So depending on the type of vehicle you have and the regulations that are associated with that vehicle, if you do not meet those, then you have to pay even an additional fee of 12.5 pounds or so. So all this has had an impact on how people use the roads in London. So has it been a success or not a success? Initially, when it first came out, the number of vehicles on the road dropped by 18% in the first year, and congestion was reduced by 30%. and the air became cleaner. So very, very good initial results. Fast forward 20 years, traffic is back, congestion is back, and in fact, London is really by far one of the most congested traffic cities in the entire world, even more so than New York. Now, why did this happen? Now, one of the things that comes along with all this is additional revenue that's now provided to a city to improve things. And some of the improvements involve allocating sections of the road to bicycles or to buses. So as a result, there's an increase in cycling now by 137%. And the repurposing of walkways and bus lanes and all that means less room for cars, but there are fewer cars, but those fewer number of cars are congesting the roads again. So is this working or not? The number of overall vehicles has gone down. That's why the air is cleaner. The space has been repurposed for bicycles, makes for a nicer environment in the city, but congestion is still there. So you could say congestion charging has improved things, but it hasn't improved in London the congestion. There's also the underlying fairness of how this works. If it's on the expensive side and you can afford it, great. But if you can't afford it, that 15 pounds a day plus the ultra low emissions cost could drive it to a point where it's not affordable for you to go into a city. So as a result, after 20 years, 2/3 of the residents of London were actually against expanding it further. Now, the interesting thing of what London has learned over all these years is to favor certain things. It could be emergency vehicles, or it could be lower emission vehicles, that type of thing. And a possibility in the future, especially with the technology that's available now, would be to monitor this on an ongoing basis, where you actually look at how much space you're actually renting on the road with your vehicle per person. So a small vehicle with many people in it would be charged way less than a large SUV with one person in it, based on the amount of time. So that's a certain area that you're renting on that road over a certain amount of time, and then probably throw in some other factors in there. If it's a sustainable vehicle, there's a discount. If you're economically disadvantaged for some reason, that could also be an additional discount, or just the efficiency overall of the route that you take, and again, the amount of time that you use to get from A to B. So in the end, congestion charging, is it good? Is it bad? It depends on the way you look at it. But overall, it's probably heading in the right direction, especially if you can further improve it with the use of technology and learning from what has happened in the past.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you with that, to be fair. And that should be what the aim of the congestion charge is. It's all about reducing congestion. That's the point of it. So if there's a way for you to calculate how many people are in your car, what's the emissions of it, what's the space that you're taking up, what's the size of it, how long you're driving it for, if there was a way to do that, then we should absolutely do it. And a lot of the technologies that we spoke about could absolutely help with that. I mean, if they can spend millions on cameras to capture number plates as they go in and out of the city or through certain areas, then they can definitely invest in things like this as they advance. And I'm absolutely with you as well with, tailoring or adjusting the actual penalties, or the charge for this based on your income, based on certain situations like that. Because the whole point of punishing someone for speeding, for example, is to deter them from doing it again. And if you're a millionaire and you're getting a speeding ticket for £80 or whatever, it's chump change. It's not really a punishment. But if you're struggling to make ends meet, as a lot of people unfortunately are, and particularly in somewhere like London, £100 could really drive you over the edge. That could mean you're not going out that week, or you might have to miss a meal, which some people unfortunately have to do. So I'm absolutely with you with that.
Well, and I think another thing might be is, what are you really trying to accomplish? Certainly you're trying to reduce congestion, but transportation is so important for feeding your family, for getting an education, for doing everything else. And you want to make sure that everyone has access to that in a very efficient way. Maybe it should be called something else. Instead of a congestion fee, maybe it's an Improve Our City fee, or improve the level of quality of life within the city, that type of thing. Because everything from air quality to eliminating congestion to making transportation affordable, all those things, how should they all be weighted? And even in London right now, congestion's not any better, but there's a lot of people that are happy with how it's improved the city.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned those names, because in other areas of the UK, like Sheffield, my hometown, they've introduced something called the Clean Air Zone, which is essentially the same thing with different rules around it. And that sounds a lot nicer, I think, the Clean Air Zone. But that doesn't stop people complaining about it either. So it's not going to solve all the problems. Oh, but yeah, that's our kind of take on emission zones and ultra low emission zones and congestion charges and everything in between. We would definitely talk about this for longer than we have, but yeah, it's something we could potentially talk about again if you guys want to hear some of our takes on it. And feel free as well to suggest any topics for us to talk about. Ed's ex-VP of Siemens Motorsports, so we've got a lot of experience there to kind of tap into. And of course, as well, if you want to see more content like this, do head over to themotoringchronicle.com, subscribe, like, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And yeah, see you for the next one.